Hey everyone, we're excited to have you here today on the last day of Cloud Next. We're going to here today to talk about one of my absolute favorite topics in the entire world, which is finishing work early and then ducking out of the office without telling anyone. We're also going to be talking about different ways that you can use Gemini Cloud Assist to do exactly that, while also looking like one of the most productive members of your team. My name is Cameron Green. I'm a product manager at Google Cloud. And I work on different Cloud Console applications, including the Gemini chat experience. Before working at Google, I worked in IT and DevOps, including all three of the big providers to manage infrastructure, build software, and query data.
And I'm Kamil Brzezinski. I'm the product manager for the Google Cloud mobile application. And yeah, I'm here to showcase hopefully interesting demo how you can use Gemini Cloud Assist.
So today we're going to give a brief overview about which specific permutation of Gemini we're going to be talking about, and then go into 3 different scenarios that can help save you time. Then we'll wrap things up and move into Q&A. Our goal is 25 to 30 minutes of talking, and then 15 to 20 minutes of Q&A, so start thinking of your questions now. Now, in case you haven't noticed, we've been talking about Gemini a lot this week. And there's lots of different permutations of Gemini that exist in lots of different surfaces, from standalone chat apps to plugins for your IDE and extensions within Workplace. Even within the cloud space, there are lots of different personas that Gemini supports: machine learning engineers, data scientists, software engineers. And we'll be focusing on a superset of those user groups that specifically uses the Google Cloud Console to get their job done. Enterprises invest heavily in cloud deployments to optimize their business experiences. But this requires really specialized cloud expertise, and that impacts cost and development speed. That's why we've developed Gemini Cloud Assist, which is a specific Gemini interface within the Google Cloud Console. It's on the right side of the screen, and it's specifically tailored to help you with your cloud and IT operations. GCA uses generative AI to effortlessly manage Google Cloud. By automating tasks and understanding user intent, it offers a more intelligent, assisted cloud experience that cuts costs, boosts speed, and fosters innovation. Gemini Cloud Assist for GCP is a goal-driven chat assistant that understands your business needs in natural language. It helps you configure costs, performance, or security targets, and helps you accelerate your technical implementations. Now, for those of you that were here at the last Cloud Next in August, you may have wondered what's changed in just 9 months. You may have been in some of the sessions where we announced various chat experiences in the console, which has since evolved into GCA. Well, for starters, we've built GCA to know more about you and your environment, better contextual awareness of who you are, the page that you're on, and the parameters within your specific project, resource names, project IDs, and so on. And that means that responses are more tailored, and any code generated is more personalized to your specific operating environment. It knows you better. We've also made it easier for GCA to give you specific links to key pages in the console. So if you ask a how do I question, or where can I go to do XYZ type question, you'll see direct links to that page in your specific environment. We've also been working on charts and graph support for better data visualization in your answers. Finally, we've been hard at work implementing the latest and greatest models for higher quality responses, and started work on retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, to give you more reliable, relevant answers by pulling in other data sources. To oversimplify, GCA knows you better, it helps you get around the console easier, and it gives you better answers than this time at the last Next experience. So with all of these improvements, let's talk about 3 specific scenarios that GCA can help you with. First, optimize. You can take an existing cloud environment, monitor resources, and get to the data that matters to you faster for the given task at hand. Second, operate. Camille will be covering this one. Take an app in production and triage issues even when you're away from your computer, thanks to our integration with the mobile app. And then design. Think of net new environments with infrastructure as code assistance. But these 3 scenarios are only the tip of the iceberg. There are over 190 GCP products and tens of thousands of different ways to use them. But we're hoping to focus on these three specifically with the hopes of getting your imagination going, right? How could you use Gemini in your everyday operations? What are some of the ways that you could duck out of the office early? Hopefully you'll have some ideas of your own after this talk. We'll start with an optimization problem. Let's say that you're working on an app that's maybe been around for a few years. Infrastructure is starting to sprawl out, and you know that there are optimizations that you could make, but you're not really sure where to start. So depending on how chaotic your working environment is, you could be monitoring your GCP ecosystem, updating your alerts and deployments anywhere from a few times a quarter to a few times a week. And the basic workflow is you log into the console, you go to cloud monitoring, or maybe some other status pages for specific products that you're using, and you make sure that everything is in the green. You're not consuming more than you thought, nothing is throwing any errors, and you don't have any unexpected logs since the last time that you checked in. But if something looks funny, then maybe you set up some new alerts to catch it the next time it happens. Or maybe you're in a new GCP project and there are no alerts at all. So you go through any resource that might look off and you adjust them. Maybe that means right-sizing a VM, maybe that means adjusting a network to cover a security issue, maybe something a little bit more complicated or involved. It's a really manual process, and it can take anywhere from 15 minutes to a few hours, depending on the complexity of your setup and how well you personally know it. Now, the problems with that approach should be pretty apparent, right? Monitoring resources takes a really, really long time, and you still run the risk of missing something. Checking all of your different dashboards takes time. Configuring alerts takes time. Separating the signal from the noise is hard, and alerting fatigue is real. Worst of all, it encourages a really reactive approach. People only tend to notice an issue after it's become a sizable problem. The notion of preventative maintenance is hard to achieve, and that can be really, really inefficient. Now, over the course of a multi-shot conversation, you can actually have Gemini help you. You can start with broad, general questions and then narrow them down based on Gemini's initial responses. So you can start with something that's intentionally kind of vague, right? Is my website responding correctly? Now, hopefully the answer is yes, but we all know that that's often too good to be true. So when Gemini says that no, your website isn't responding correctly, you can coax out more information. What resources are causing that problem? Can you take me to the specific page where I can find those resources? As an example, you can ask it to show you, let's say, the specific backend latency of your service. We can take a look at that on the next slide. Now, just to be fully transparent, we've got a fully pre-recorded session that's going on a loop here. You know, sometimes responses take more than a few seconds, and we want to avoid dead air on convention center Wi-Fi. I want you to imagine that you're trying to get to the bottom of some latency issues. You're not sure if the info that you're looking for is on compute or maybe networks, but eventually you remember that there's the Metrics Explorer page, and you go there. You open a new query, and immediately you open another tab because you need to check and make sure that your syntax is right. You run the query, you get an error, you double-check your syntax, you run the query again. Eventually, you get your answers, right? Or you can open the Gemini chat panel. Show me the back-end latency of my global back-end service. A few seconds later, you get a response that includes that same time series chart that took you a couple of tries to get right. The query's already been written and executed. There's even a link at the bottom that takes you to that page. Now, to be transparent again, Gemini, like a lot of different LLM-based experiences, is non-deterministic. So you'll get slightly different answers for the exact same prompt, and that does mean that sometimes the model won't give you exactly what you're looking for. When I try this out, I often like to give the same prompt multiple times or maybe tweak the prompt a little bit just to get the answer that I'm looking for. I promise, even if you give it a couple of tries, you'll still be leaving the office early. So when we ran through this on our team, manually sifting through logs to get to the bottom of this problem and then writing the query took about 40 minutes. A single-shot conversation in GCA took 21 seconds. I'll hand it off to Camille to talk about the second scenario.
Thank you, Cameron. It really is amazing. OK, I will talk about a different scenario using the mobile app. So yeah, let's imagine we had an on-call. It's 10 a.m. On Thursday, and we are getting notification that something is wrong, right? So typically, the to-do list would be to get, first of all, aware that something is really happening. Hopefully, it's not from your customers, but it's from your cloud monitoring notification. You need to get through a lot of different logs, metrics, gather the data, try to understand it, analyze it, and figure out what may be the root cause of this specific problem that you had just paged, right? And then, if it's required, you need to deploy the fix or roll back to the previous version, whatever will work for you. And by the end, of course, it's always good to do a post-mortem with the team to understand next time what you can do better. And the problems with this specific approach is that it can take some time. First of all, it can take some time to detect that something wrong is happening, right? If you don't have a right setup for your cloud operations, you may not notice that your VM is down, right? And getting the data manually will take you a lot of time. I know from customers, whenever something bad is happening, they are opening not a few, but really multiple pages on the Chrome browser with some custom dashboards, with the log explorer, just to understand what is really happening, right? And we are all humans. We can make errors. So whenever you are analyzing the problem, you may be wrong. So in order to fix all those typical approach, we can use the Gemini on the mobile, on the Google Cloud mobile app. So instead of waiting from like a third-party tool or from your customers that something wrong happens, you can easily set up the alert and get notified on your mobile application. Instead of texting your colleague from the team in the middle of night, you can just open the chat and start putting some prompts to begin a conversation with the Gemini. And instead of manually parsing the logs, which sometimes may be complicated, you can just ask with a single touch of the button, explain this log or explain this error to me, and you will get in a few seconds the nice human-readable information, what's in the specific log. And instead of looking into documentation and trying to figure out how to fix it, you can try to troubleshoot with the Gemini. So let's go and check how it looks like. So as I mentioned, it's around 10 a.m. I'm in the office. I'm just going to grab my second coffee to the office kitchen, and I got paged. I got notification on the phone. I have just a few minutes to respond to it because I'm on the on-call, right? So I'm opening the notification, getting to the incident. I can briefly see that something is happening, really, that probably one of the VM is overloaded. So with one tap, I can acknowledge that I'm starting working on this problem and let other team members know about it. And I'm opening the chat, the Gemini chat, which is available from most of the screens on the mobile app, and starting to prompt what may be wrong, right? So my first prompt would be, yeah, show me the average CPU usage of all the instances that's name starting with some string, right? Because I know that this is my production environment. And with a few seconds, getting the information from the cloud monitoring, gathering all the data, processing it, we're going to have a nice chart showing some of the VMs that we ask for. With this information, I'm pretty sure, just after a few seconds, that this specific VM is not working as it should, right? So maybe someone makes some changes. Let me ask the Gemini, list the VMs that have some changes within the last 24 hours. And I will know exactly which VMs have changed. And I can see on the list that there was some change on one of the production VMs. Someone make it, and yeah, we need to figure out what happens, right? I get my coffee already because I was walking to the kitchen and doing all this stuff on my phone. So I'm back at the desk, and I can open the console and get to the logs I would be able to do it also on the phone, but I'm already at the desk, right? So I'm browsing through the logs and trying to figure out what's in the logs. With a press of the button, explain this log entry, I can see that someone detached the disk, like a boot disk from the VM. So I found another log and figured out that someone attached a different disk. They upgraded not only operating system, but probably also the application inside. So if a matter of a few minutes, I know that someone put a new disk into one of the production machines. Luckily, it was not Friday 5 p.m. It was Thursday 10 a.m. So it's still fine. But unfortunately, some users may experience the issues already. So I can roll back the problem, and it's fixed. With a few taps, with just a few minutes, it's fixed. So I can get my app back again from my pocket and close the incident. So everyone knows on my team that it's done, right? Typically, it would take around an hour to get through the logs, get through the metrics, try to find the root cause, try to analyze the problem, and make it fixed, right? What you're able to see, we were able to do the same operation using Gemini Cloud Assist with just a few minutes. And it's done, right? Thank you. Let's go back to Cameron.
Good job. So let's do our third and final scenario in talking about a design situation with IAC. I don't know about the rest of y'all, but IAC is absolutely the bane of my existence, especially when I'm working in a multi-cloud environment. Now, let's assume that you've been tasked with migrating some resources from one provider to another, and you're not super familiar with your destination environment. Maybe you hate IAC too. Now, typically, you'd have to write or modify your code in Terraform or CloudFormation or some other IAC tool, right? You'd manually review your syntax, you'd review your policies, and check your best practices, both industry-wide and any specific quirks that your company has around it. You'd commit changes to the version control of your choice, you'd write and run tests to validate everything in a staging environment, and then you'd deploy to prod. It's pretty straightforward, but it's also still full of friction. The main problem here is that writing and testing and deploying only to find out you need to change something is a huge waste of time. It can also require multiple team members to manually sign off on a change, and that creates some pretty bad bottlenecks. Plus, I'm sure that you've all been on a team or a company where you submit your pull request, and the reviewer is late to lunch, so they spend like 5 seconds looking at it and hit the looks good to me without actually reviewing anything, and so it doesn't actually pass muster, and you run into a problem a little bit later. There's also inconsistency across teams in the same company, lack of real-time feedback, and issues trying to prognosticate resource optimization. You're never quite sure if the deployment is ideal until you see them in prod running for a little bit. But Gemini can help. Whether it's writing IAC code from scratch, validating existing IAC code, or porting IAC from one provider to another, you can prompt GCA directly within the Cloud Console. We have an enormous context window, so you can paste in extremely large files without having to go to your IDE and text editor. I think a lot of people have the misconception that if I'm in the Cloud Console, I can only ask questions, but there are coding-based applications you can do in the console as well. So let's imagine that you're migrating some resources from AWS to GCP. Your boss tells you where a bunch of Terraform scripts are located. You navigate to your internal repo, but you're new to the team and you're not quite sure what the scripts do. You're also new to GCP, and you're far from an expert. Here, you've got a Terraform script that's a few hundred lines long. And sure, you could read it and tease out what it does and how you could use it better. Or you could hope that the README is up to date or there's some internal documentation. But that can be pretty hit or miss, especially on a team that moves really quickly. So why not just paste the entire Terraform script directly into the chat panel in the console? I wasn't kidding about the size of that context window. I pasted the whole thing in a single prompt and then asked me to describe the architecture and explain to me how I might be able to build it in Google Cloud. And in a single shot, it gives you the answer. What's more, it even provides the Terraform script to create it in GCP off of the same prompt, even though I didn't explicitly ask it to do that. It took me 2 hours to manually validate, review, and port that Terraform. A single shot in Gemini took 21 seconds. So just to wrap things up, I actually want to zoom out a little bit and think about how Gemini could be used for other applications, right? We just covered 3 situations here, but there are some generalities that we can consider, right? Think about tasks that are simple but really tedious to do. Think about tasks that require lots of manual review, or think about situations where you have lots of potentially right answers, but one best answer. Now, even though those 3 scenarios today are pretty specific, I hope you can see how to ask similar questions when your use case wasn't covered, right? Lots of people have noisy data to sift through, and Gemini can be that first line of sifting. Complex infrastructure can have lots of failure points. Asking Gemini to identify those risking areas proactively can save you time. And really excitingly, it's on the mobile app now, so you don't have to worry about issues on the go, or maybe you only have access to one monitor and you want to chat on the app while still having your dedicated main monitor to the work at hand. At this point, I'd like to open things up for Q&A. We've got our standard, give feedback about the actual session, and then you can also meet with our user experience researchers. We also have a really awesome book that was written by our chief evangelist, Richard Seroter, called Time to Find Flow. It's free. You can click on the QR code to download it.